I just completed the postgraduate program for artificial intelligence and machine learning at the University of Texas at Austin. It's a 7-month online program designed to build concrete skills in AI and ML. And you get a professional certificate at the end of it, which I now finally have. And it looks like this. It's digital, of course. Haven't decided yet if it's something I want to print out and have framed. I did spend quite a bit of time earning this certificate, so it feels kind of appropriate, but we'll see. Up until this video, I'd been reviewing every single module that I'd been completing in real time as I was going through the program, of which there were about 6 modules in total. And you can check out all those videos if you want something more in depth, and that's after, of course, you watch this video. But if you want to learn more about the program itself, there is a link that I'll provide down below, and there you'll be able to see the latest and greatest. And as is the case with artificial intelligence, this field evolves very quickly, so the content over time may change. But in this video, now that I'm done with the program in its entirety, I wanted to give you my review and then answer the question of whether I found this to be worth my time. With that said, let's get to it. Let's start with why I did this program. The main reason was because I saw AI becoming more and more integrated with everything we do as business professionals. And really, I saw it as a tool. And if I didn't become more familiar with this tool, I would not be competitive in the job market of the future. Now, this program goes beyond simply how to use generative AI tools like ChatGPT. It gives you a lot of foundational knowledge on how it all works on the back end. And that means that you get to actually learn how to build these machine learning algorithms. Which leads me to another reason I did this program, which was I wanted to learn how to code better. Now, although I've taken coursework in the past, I don't really have a formal background in software development or coding. And I saw coding as an important skill to have as a professional. And in this program, there's a lot of coding. In fact, that's what you spend a lot of your time understanding and using. And this is all done in the Python programming language, which is one of the most widely used and really the most approachable, especially for beginners like me. But if you have zero interest in learning how to code, then this particular program may not be for you. But they do teach you what you need to know. It is beginner friendly, at least in my opinion. So it's great if you're up for the challenge. That said, coding is not something I had ever sought to do as a full-time job. Nor do I feel the need, especially at my stage in my career, that I need to be an expert. But I felt it valuable enough to at least have some skill in it. And that's because most of my career has been involved with heavy data analysis. And so I wanted more tools in my tool belt beyond just Excel and Power BI. And last reason was I wanted some formal education to fill in what I considered to be a technical skill gap. And I figured this would give me a bit of an advantage when seeking out roles in the future that were already within my scope of professional experience. Now, in saying that, I did want to clarify something. I did not do this program because I wanted to pivot my career into the field of artificial intelligence and machine learning. More than anything, I just wanted AI and ML to be a part of my current career path. Now, if you do want to pivot your career, I'll have more to say on that topic later, so make sure to stay till the very end and I'll talk about it then. Now, by the way, one extra note on part of why I did this program, or why it made it a no-brainer for me, was that I was able to get full tuition reimbursement from my employer. So this whole entire program was actually covered in full. So if you're considering this program, I'd highly recommend you check with your employer to see if they offer any kind of tuition reimbursement or assistance for a program like this. Now, would I have done it if it wasn't covered? For me personally, I still would have leaned towards a yes. Not only for the reasons that I listed above, but when I looked at this program compared to all the other programs out there in the market, I like this one because it was backed by a prominent university that's globally recognized, especially in the field of computer science. And this is actually the school I got my undergraduate degree in a long time ago. The content itself seemed extensive enough for my purposes and what I wanted to get out of it. There were other programs that I saw on the market that were maybe 6 weeks long and the same cost, or even higher cost. I believe UC Berkeley has a similar program to this one, although the cost is a little bit higher. But nonetheless, this was, to me, as close to a master's degree that I could get to without investing all the money and especially time in getting a master's degree. Now let's talk about the program format. First, it's a fully online program for the price of around $4,200. And of course that can vary, but that's what it was at the time of this recording. Part of the online format is pre-recorded video content that you go through that cover all the topics in artificial intelligence and machine learning. But then you have a once per week live virtual session. Now, most of these sessions are mandatory. These are part of your grade and they do want you to be engaged and involved here. Now, second point here is that this is a curriculum that was developed by the University of Texas. The university partnered with an online learning platform called Great Learning to deliver all this content. Not only that, the platform is also used to host various resources and communities to get all the participants engaged and get the most out of this program. Another note about this partnership with Great Learning is that it's more than just a platform. It's also an education technology company with its own staff and also its own educators, some of whom, by the way, come from some of the top universities like Stanford and MIT. Now, the majority of the pre-recorded content is taught and recorded by University of Texas faculty. But there's also other content, in at least one module in particular, maybe two, that is taught by faculty at Great Learning. But again, it's teaching to the curriculum that the university has developed. Now, as for the live sessions that I mentioned, those are hosted and taught by what the program terms as mentors. These are people that are currently working in the field of data science or computer science or artificial intelligence and machine learning. Or they may be in a higher education degree program like a PhD, but they too have also had work experience in the field. Now, I actually really like this format because you get all the pre-recorded content taught by faculty in a very, I would say, academic way. With the mentors, you get a better sense for how what you're learning applies in the real world. And as the mentor goes through some of the problem sets that we get to see them complete some of these exercises in real time. So we can better understand how they think about problems, how they break them down, and then how to best code for it. And everyone codes a little bit differently, but it's good to know, okay, I've been taught this way from an academic standpoint, but how would someone actually write this on their own, and how do they think about it? So what did I learn in this program? The program was divided into 6 modules where they start with foundational coding basics, and each module progresses in complexity, but building naturally on what you had learned previously. And these modules for me were Python Foundations, Machine Learning, Advanced Machine Learning, Neural Networks, Computer Vision, and Natural Language Processing. Each module contains pre-recorded lectures with mini quizzes throughout that are checkpoints for your understanding. Each module contains sub-modules. You basically complete one per week. Each sub-module contains a timed graded quiz as a more formal checkpoint of your understanding. Once you've completed all the sub-module content, then you have a project deliverable tied to the topic. These projects are based on some business challenges that you have to solve using what you learned in the module. And the projects can be done in one of 2 ways. One is full code. This is where you write all the code from scratch to build the solution, and you include all relevant insights and recommendations in the programming notebook that you then submit. Then there's an option for low code. This is where you're given almost all of the code and then you just have to fill in some blanks. However, what you submit is a PowerPoint presentation with the insights and recommendations. So this is a nice option for you to be able to pick a path where, again, if presentation is more what you're focused on, you've got that option. But if you're someone like me and you want to invest more time in learning how to code, then you've got the other option as well. For my case, I opted to do full code for 5 of the 6 projects because, again, coding was a learning priority for me. Now, because I have multiple videos on all the different modules, I won't go into too much detail on the content, but I will say all of it was top-notch. It was really great content, very easy to understand, and there were actually from UT, from the university, there were 2 faculty members that were teaching different modules. There was 1 or 2 people from Great Learning that taught some of the modules as well. And what's interesting is, again, they all have different teaching styles, but all of them were quite good and they all offered something a little bit different. Having done an online MBA through the University of Illinois and understanding how that kind of program gets put together, how the online interaction tends to be, and the quality of the content, and comparing that to what I just went through with this program, I would say it's on par with a full-fledged university degree program. That said, just like in any of my studies in the past, whether it be in school or otherwise, I still had to consult and rely on a lot of third-party sources like YouTube. There's some really great channels like StatQuest that helped me understand some of the concepts a little bit better. And I'm sure there were other resources I came across. It just really depended on the topic. So again, the content itself was good, still had to supplement with other resources, but I would have had to do that anyway with a degree program. And just to give you a taste of some of the content that I went through with some of the modules, I'll give a quick overview of those. First was the Python Basics course, which was great, and among one of my favorites because it wasn't that difficult. Again, it's beginner material, and I had already gone through and learned a good amount of this in previous learnings and previous studies of mine that were independent of this. But it covered topics like data types, variables, operators, control flow, functions, input, output, and string manipulation. It also covered data structures, which becomes really important in the later modules. After Python Basics, there were two machine learning modules. One was more or less the basics, the intro, and then also the advanced machine learning topics. We went into detail on various regression analysis techniques, which is ideal for something like price elasticity, where, for example, how many more widgets would you sell if you drop the price? And this was one of the more exciting parts for me because this is what I largely did the program for. A lot of my background is in data analysis and what other tools and methodologies could I use to look at the data. We also discussed clustering and bagging, which are ways in which you can segment out data and identify patterns. Then you use that to build models that can make predictions. A good example that's very, very common is a recommendation engine for movies or shows. If their goal is to keep people on the platform and keep people watching, then they want to serve content that is relevant to them. Now, the module on neural networking was very interesting, but here's where the difficulty starts to ramp up for me. This is where you build algorithms that learn over time and over multiple iterations. Basically, it makes predictions one at a time very, very fast, obviously. Each time it makes a prediction, it checks to see how accurate it was, and it learns from the instances in which it was inaccurate. The model then self-corrects and adjusts certain weightings of certain variables to then make better predictions going forward. And so this module was a precursor to the next one, well, the next two really, the first of which was computer vision. This module was actually one of the ones I was, believe it or not, least interested in because it just wasn't applicable to what I was doing or what my work experience had been. Not that I don't think it's interesting in general to be aware of, it just wasn't interesting for me from a learning standpoint. I ended up being entirely wrong, and this was the most interesting module of the entire program. And here you learn to build algorithms that analyze imagery and then categorizes them and then makes predictions about other images that it sees and helps categorize them as well. Probably the most popular example of computer vision today is something like Tesla's full self-driving. And this is where it's reviewing, I don't know how many billions and trillions of hours of video content, which are just, again, a series of many, many images, but it's reviewing that imagery and then categorizing them. Now, I'm going to oversimplify this quite a bit, but essentially what's happening is it's categorizing all the images that are coming through, and it's categorizing them in the context of what the next action for the vehicle should be. For example, it would learn that this octagon, this red octagon that says stop on there, is a stop sign. And based on all the video that's come through and all the actions that real world drivers had taken, in those cases, the driver stops. Therefore, this algorithm learns that this vehicle needs to stop when this image is presented to it. And that's just one of millions of examples of road conditions that can come up that then help predict or determine what the next course of action for the vehicle should be. Now, the project for this module wasn't as cool as that, and I would imagine it would have been way more difficult to try to do that, but it was something more simple but also very practical, and we find this in a lot of different industries today. But the project was to build an algorithm to identify hundreds of images of plant saplings so that you could see whether they were growing as intended. Different plants grow differently and have different needs. Challenge was, many of these plants, when they're saplings, look very similar to one another. So it takes an algorithm with far more sophistication than the human eye to detect the subtle differences in all those plants. And then to do this at scale with hundreds and thousands of images. It then needs to categorize and understand, oh, this is this type of plant, this other one is this other type of plant, and therefore for us to determine whether they're growing the right way or at the right rate, we can determine that based on what plants these are. Now the last module was natural language processing, which for me was the most difficult. Ironically, easy to understand the concept, and I've used ChatGPT and other LLMs for many years at this point, but the back-end coding and the steps involved in building the algorithm were a bit of a stretch for me. But I muscled through it. I'd be lying if I said I knew precisely what I was doing, but some of it's just a little bit luck. You write the code and somehow it works, but you're not quite sure why. And I think that's the case for a lot of coders from what I understand. In concept, the module walks you through how word predictions are made as a response to when you prompt something in an LLM like ChatGPT. The model then learns what words are commonly put together and in what sequence. Short of it is, a lot of it has to do with training this algorithm on a huge set of text data. Think about the World Wide Web and all the text that exists there. The model then learns what words are commonly placed next to each other. Based on that, in other contexts, it's able to parse out meaning and sentiment, which then translates to some text output from ChatGPT based on what you, the user, has prompted it to provide. Now the program for me was about as much time commitment as would have been a full course in a master's degree program that's medium difficulty, which meant that I averaged about 10 hours per week. Now, obviously the difficulty varied by the module I was taking, and apart from natural language processing, everything was fairly manageable. Not easy by any stretch, but also not unreasonably difficult. Just enough to challenge myself and learn. Overall, I really enjoyed this program. I thought the content was great, as was the instruction. The resources they provide are extensive, not only in terms of learning, but also networking as well as career development. I also got a lot out of the coding practice, and I feel way more comfortable coding than I did 7 months ago. Am I an expert though? No, not by a long shot. But it's one of those things where if you wanted to develop an expertise, that would require many more years and much more practice. But I feel like I know enough, and I would feel confident in reading and interpreting code, at least for Python, maybe by extension other programming languages. And then writing code from scratch would still prove for me to be a little bit difficult, but now I know how to go about it. And actually, believe it or not, ChatGPT, other LLMs are great for coding assistance. It's a great instructor if you're learning to, even if you're reading code and you want to better understand what the code is saying, that's where an LLM comes in handy. So it's actually the world's best tutor. It's very patient. You ask it as many questions as you need to understand the topic or understand the code. But at the same time, you have to know enough about coding to understand that the output that it's giving you is correct. Now, I got out of this program what I wanted out of it, so I'm happy with it. But is it right for you? If you're looking to develop an understanding of AI and ML for the purposes of advancing the career you're already in, I think it's a phenomenal option. In my view, it's a great proof point to show to prospective employers that you have the capability of learning the subject matter and completing tasks in the context of artificial intelligence. However, if you're looking at this to pivot your career into a different career, or perhaps a career in dedicated artificial intelligence and machine learning, the chances of this program helping you do that depend on many other factors. And if, for example, you wanted to pivot your career to AI and ML, then you'd have to be pivoting from a closely related field like computer science or data analytics. At that point, this program may be all the push that you need to get your career moved in that direction. However, if you're coming from a totally unrelated field, like maybe you're coming from being a history teacher, this program probably won't get you there. A master's degree in computer science may be a much better option. But even then, it would only qualify you for entry-level roles, which again is okay, and that's to be expected if you have no experience and all you have is this degree or credential. So temper your expectations that you'd be able to jump into an AI career making well over 6 figures if you don't already have experience or education in a closely related field. Knowing that, and if that's your case, there are some degree options that are out there that are worth considering, especially if you're serious about a transition over the long term. But if you're less serious about making a transition to AI and it's more so a a curiosity at this point, but you still maybe want something to show for your learning, this is a great program. Of course, obviously I recommend it, I did it, but there are other options out there that are even more affordable, granted, less impactful, maybe less learning, but you can still get some kind of certificate out of it. And if you want to learn a little bit more about those options, make sure to check out my next video where I talk into a little bit more detail about some of those. So folks, if you have any questions about the program, please feel free to let me know down in the comments below. Would be happy to answer those. And with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you around.